Welcome back. This is Arai News. You're watching the morning show with me, Viola Lavi,
and I am Victoria Pepple.
With several years of working as an investment banker on Wall Street under his belt, our next guest, Mustafa Chike-Obi, was appointed Managing Director, CEO of the Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria by the Nigerian government in 2010, a post he held till 2015. He will be talking today on the Nigerian economy, the crowded field of presidential aspirants as we approach 2019 elections, and what Nigerians need to demand and ask for its next leader. Yeah. So, welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So we're going to start with some of the things you're very passionate about, and I follow you on Twitter, so I know you're very passionate about the upcoming elections. The field is crowded. There's a lot of people throwing their hats in the rings, and you've said a couple of things that have been sort of like lightning rods online. And one of the things you said that I saw got a lot of questions and a lot of discussions was around the issue. I don't want to get it wrong. You said it's better for corrupt leaders to have honorable people around them. I'm paraphrasing now. Can you expand on that? Because there was a lot of back and forth, and I think sometimes with 140 characters, it's very difficult to understand what you meant by that.
What I meant is that in Nigeria, in our system of government, the president doesn't do anything. He gets people to do things for him. And part of the frustration many presidents have is they have to depend on the people around them to get things done. And because of the amount of power the president has in the Nigerian system, if the people around you are corrupt in your name, no matter how much integrity you have, they go ahead and do things that are corrupt using your name, and there's no way as a president you can know about it. Of course, the best thing is to have a president with tremendous integrity, surround himself with people of tremendous integrity. That's the best case. But if we have to choose between a president who is not so, doesn't have so much integrity, but has people around him that say, no, you can't do this. Sir, you can't do this. Let's do it this way. This is a better way of doing it. You get a better result when the people around you that are actually executing are the ones who have the integrity. But when the president has the integrity and the people around him don't have the integrity, they will take his instructions and they will distort it and find a corrupt way to do what he wants to do. So given those two choices, I've found that it's much better than the people who are executing. Presidents ask for things. And it's up to you to say, sir, we can't do it this way. The law says this, the law says that. Let's do it this way. This is a better way to do it. And I find that in this dispensation, there are a lot of people around the president who are executing, who interpret his directions or his directives in ways that are not as honest as he may have intended them.
Looking at the political terrain as it is in Nigeria, 91 political parties would say that politics or elections took a different direction during the last administration after the elections when the ruling party didn't come back. It was brand new. What is the effect of something like that happening on the next elections? You think it made people bolder to step up and say, you know what, I probably have a chance at this?
Well, let's be pragmatic here. The next president of Nigeria is going to be either from the APC, from the PDP. The rest of it is noise. It's good noise. It's good for somebody like Kingsley Moghalu has shown us that you can get a group of people to support you based on policy. But Kingsley is not going to be the next president of Nigeria. He doesn't have the structures, and his time may not be correct. And maybe in 2023, people will remember him, and he'll have a better chance. So it's down to APC and PDP. In the APC, it's not a crowded field. It's assumed that the president will get the ticket. It may not happen, but nobody assumes that. In the PDP side, I think there's now 12 candidates. 12 candidates. If you look at what happened in the US, just in the last election, there were up to 26 candidates in the Republican Party. They managed to get Trump, and he still won, even though he was in a field of 26. So I don't think 13 is that much, or 12. What matters to the PDP is that they pick the best person, and that the rest of them unite and support that person. So it's premature when people start analyzing who's going to win, who's not going to win, who can beat Buhari, who cannot beat Buhari. You don't even know who is going to contest against Buhari. You don't know who his vice presidential pick will be, and all those things matter. So I tell people, let's wait till October 10th, we will know what the field is, and then we can handicap who's going to win, who's not going to win. But right now it's too early, and I don't think the field is as crowded as people say it is.
One of the things, going back to my earlier question to you about the honorable versus integrity. You've been a very strong critic of this administration, and a lot of that has been because of the economic policies or the lack of growth. Another one of your tweets also talked about how people are poorer today than they were during Goodluck's term, during Goodluck's administration. When you look at the economy today, people are still complaining. The microeconomics, people don't feel there's a way out. Do you believe that with the election coming, with the possibility of a new administration, there could be a change, there could be a tide turning in the economy? And what are those levers that are going to change the economy that any presidential aspirant needs to be talking about now?
Well, let me correct one impression. I was a critic of the economic policies of the Jonathan administration as well. The difference was that I was part of it, and I had channels to direct my criticism privately. So I could go to the president and say, sir, these things are not being done the proper way. I wasn't listened to enough, but I still had the channel. So here I have no access. So I'm forced to criticize publicly. So what looks like criticism against this administration, I also applied it against the other administration. So just correct that. Now, going to what your real question is, our economy. Our economy is in very, very bad shape. It was in bad shape under Jonathan. It has gotten a lot worse under this administration. We are in a critical situation. I'll give you one thing that bothers me the most. We have a debt service to revenue of, depending on who you talk to, certainly over 50%. Of this debt service, we have a lot of it that's in foreign currency. Our currency is overvalued. It will be devalued at some point in the next 5 years. When you do that, your debt service increases. So it goes from the 50 or 60% to 75%. Nobody, no economy, no borrower, no household, no business can survive with a debt service to revenue much above 35%. In fact, 35% in the US is considered the maximum debt service to income. So we're at a place where we will almost certainly default or renegotiate on some of our debts. Almost certainly. So the economy is in a really, really serious situation. And I don't hear people talking about it. I see complacency. They give you a 2% growth. 2% growth is insufficient. It's not going to get us out. We need to go to double-digit growth. We need to have people who can get us double-digit growth, wherever they come from. We need to, it's critical at this point. So I don't think that it'll be very easy for the next administration or this administration to fix the economy without serious sacrifice from the government and from the people. And the way you get people to make sacrifice is you make it as a leader, and then you show them the way out. You show them what the results will be 5 or 6 years. And that's what leadership is. You don't tell people that 1.5% GDP growth is better than 0. Of course it's better than 0, but it's not good enough. So the problems are very deep. We have too much debt. We have too little income. We spend way too much money. We are irresponsible. I tell people, if I was advising the president, I would tell him to fly in Nigeria on commercial flights. If the president flew on a commercial flight going from Abuja to Lagos, everybody on that flight would think they'd flown with God. They would worship him. He's got to make some sacrifices that people see, so that we ourselves will make sacrifices in following him.
Let me play the devil's advocate.
Sorry, I don't want us to lose this point about double-digit growth. Because also, I mean, this is not your first time on the show, when we've had this conversation before. In our last conversation, some of the areas that we were looking at about sort of that will propel double-digit growth was infrastructure. We had conversations about education, also agriculture and manufacturing. Since the last time, because it's been a while you were last here, is there anything that you've seen that gives you, that you see, that you're like, okay, there's light like there's some light at the end of this tunnel, or at the same time you believe we've been stagnant since our last conversation, or it's even deteriorating?
It's much worse, and the reason why, and the middle class will hate me when I say this, our currency is too strong. It encourages this consumption of foreign goods. The only way to stop people from buying foreign goods is either impose a tariff on it, which America is trying to do. But America can do it because they have very secure borders. If you try to impose tariffs in Nigeria, the smuggling will become the order of the day. So it's a blunt instrument to use tariffs for a country like Nigeria. The only other instrument available to stop the consumption of foreign goods and the making of your goods is by having a weak currency. The Chinese had a weak currency. We were talking about China earlier. They had a weak currency for 40 years as official policy. Every U.S. president tried to prevail on China to make their currency stronger. And they refused because that was the only way China could start becoming a productive economy. We must make that sacrifice. We must weaken our currency so that people like me, when we come on shows like this, are wearing made in Nigeria clothes because we can't afford the foreign equivalent. We must get there. Until we do that and we keep flying business class and flying first class and sending our children abroad and buying things and drinking champagne at Landmark, until we stop doing those things, we will not make anything in Nigeria. We are just not going to be competitive enough. So we must weaken our currency. And this keeping currency at 360 or 305 and saying that is a sign of progress. No, it's not a sign of progress. It's a drug that we're all addicted to.
Is that because we're artificially strengthening the Naira? And
making foreign goods cheaper.
All right, now, let's talk about some of the gains this administration would celebrate you probably wouldn't agree with. While you talk about the fact that we should devalue a currency, we've been trying to, the CBN has been pumping dollars into the system to keep the Naira stable.
Yes.
And that is a credit that they would claim and say, you know what, this policy has worked in this area. Also, when you talk about the fact that the economy hasn't done so well, the President Buhari administration would say in agriculture we recorded some gains and all of that. Now we export. So while you say these things, can't we see a glimmer of hope in the small steps that have been taken? Are you saying the steps are inadequate? When you say we need to go beyond 2%, is it possible within an administration to take a giant leap as regards growth?
Nigeria has a lot of really brilliant people. And let's take the last World Cup as an example. We took the best we could, and we didn't do well enough. Maybe we remove the coach, and we get a new coach. But what we don't do, we don't fire everybody who was in the team. We don't change everything. Maybe we change one or two players. When you have an administration that says everybody that's in the PDP was bad, we're going to remove all of them. All of them. They're all bad. Only APC is good. Everything they did was wrong. All of them are corrupt. You lose a lot of value in people who are very, very good. And some of those people, as you see, have been recognized other places in the world. Let us take our best people and challenge them to getting us the double-digit growth we need.
And it's possible.
It is possible. We can do it in a year. And when somebody comes and says he wants to be Minister of Finance, you say, can you deliver double-digit growth? Yes or no? If his answer is no, fine, go back to what you were doing. We'll find the people who are willing to take up that challenge. And we appoint them in the critical places, because without our economy, and again, we're talking about our young people who are basically our future, we must find them things to do. If you don't find them things to do, they will find things to do that are not productive. And the only way we can get enough jobs in the private sector is we have double-digit growth. Eco-Atlantic, which is a brilliant visionary idea, they have stopped construction on their project, the Azuri project, because the purchasing power isn't strong enough. We want Azuri projects everywhere in Nigeria, in Owerri, in Aba. We need to have our people employed. And the only way to do that is to get the best minds, the most educated people, the most passionate people who believe they can give us double-digit growth.
Is it the people or the system?
Well, when you have a plan, there's a plan called ERGP, Economic Growth and Recovery Plan, that targets 7% growth as its objective in 2023. We've already failed. Give me somebody who says, I want 15% GDP by 2021. And if he doesn't do it, I remove him, I put somebody else who can do that. That's the plan. That's the point. We don't have people who are visionary enough right now leading the charge.
Do you see any of have you heard anything from the aspirants that makes you say, okay, these are people that I believe understand where Nigeria needs to go? Because double-digit growth with the economy we've had, with the sluggish economy we've had, actually across Africa has only been achieved by a handful of economies. Actually, only one or two.
Well, Ivory Coast with no oil.
Okay, Ivory Coast
is approaching double-digit growth. They are close to 8% now, 8, 9. Yeah. Ghana is doing well, and Ghana has made some sacrifices. And there are things, Ethiopia. Yes. So it's possible. Nigeria, being the strongest and most endowed by nature and by its people, should be able to do better than Ivory Coast. So if Ivory Coast can hit 9, why can't we hit 10? That's one. But going back to the people and the people who are contesting, I just want 3 things from the next president. 3 things, not 100. I want a president that will unite our country. Our country is badly divided and badly broken along ridiculous lines. We need somebody who can say, I am a Nigerian, we're all Nigerians, and let's unite. It's the first most important thing. And the way to do it, certainly, restructuring is very key in doing it. And we can go into how that's going to be done. The second thing is to deal with the economy. Fix the economy. Get the best mind. There is no economist in the Nigerian economic team. There are people who understand economics. I don't want to insult anybody. But there's no trained economist. The CBN governor is not a trained economist. The Minister of Finance is not a trained economist. The Minister of Budget and Plan is not a trained economist. The Vice President is not a trained economist. Those are the key components of your economic team. None of them is an economist. Let us deal with economy properly and target double-digit growth.
What are some of those things that need to happen with the economy? I want us to be specific here. And I want you I still want us to go back to the foreign exchange policy, because you've said it then, you're saying it again, which is, once again, if you look at the Naira today is not where it naturally needs to be, because it is being artificially strengthened.
Yeah, that's correct.
So let's talk, I want us to dig into that a little bit. And where do you actually think that the Naira will fall in the next 4 or 5 years? Because you did say...
Well, let me tell you the third thing I want from the next president. Unite the country, fix the economy, and prepare the grounds for the next generation. Fill your leadership positions with young people so that they can stand out and learn, and the ones that emerge will then take over. So I want the
Define young people, because in Nigeria, young people is there's 40, regular age and football age. There's 40, a huge range.
40 and under.
Okay. So you're saying the next president needs to look at people 40 and under.
And give them responsible positions and challenge them. And if they fail, they fail. If they succeed, they be lifted up. Those are the 3 things I want from the next president. And how you do it, obviously, it's not as simple as we're saying it here, but let's have those objectives and let us find the person who best typifies those objectives. Going back to foreign exchange, if there's a hotel in, I believe it's in Kigali, Radisson Blu, that's almost the exact replica of the Radisson Blu in Victoria Island. If you're a foreigner and you take your dollars to that Kigali, it costs you $150, $200 a room a night. If you come to Nigeria, it costs you $400, $500 a night. That tells me, if I'm a foreigner and I wanted to go spend a week in Africa, that I should go to Kigali because my money buys twice as much. So it tells me my currency is overvalued, that things look expensive in dollar terms in Nigeria for a foreigner. And that means that things look cheap in dollar terms abroad for Nigerians. So, and in economics, there's a name for it. The point is that things in Nigeria are expensive in dollar terms. So that means that Naira is too strong. And we must get the Naira to a level where things look cheap to foreigners. That was what's going to encourage foreigners to come here. That's what's going to encourage us to spend our money here. That's what's going to dissuade us from going on vacation to Dubai.
But when the Naira was 400 to the dollar, you saw the outcry, you saw
the outcry from the spoiled middle class who couldn't fly first class anymore and go to London on their 2-week vacations to bring their children. That's who had the outcry.
Fair enough.
But the truth of the matter
But that's not who the government should be pandering to then.
Exactly. And at that time, because I did look, a lot of Nigerian businesses, small businesses were springing up. And when the Naira strengthened back to 360, a lot of those businesses closed. Now, what I'm saying may not be what somebody like Landmark wants to hear, because when the Naira is devalued, he cannot transfer the prices, the change in the currency to his rooms. So there was a time when many of the hotels and hospitality places in Lagos, when it was at 520, were having a very hard time because they couldn't transfer the change in Naira, in dollar to the Naira. But we will adjust. We will adjust. We have to make sacrifices. In my view, the Naira should be allowed to devalue by 10% a year in an orderly fashion. So everybody knows it's at 300 today. At the end of the year, it will be at 330. Gradually.
10%.
That's inflation differential. So it should 10%. So if we know where it is, people can hedge it forward. People can know people can have certainty. If you do that, you're going to get 10 times the amount of foreign investment you're getting today. If people can plan, in 5 years from now, the Naira will be here. So here's how I'm going to price my product so that over 10 years, I know that I get my money back.
So if you're saying that the Naira should be allowed to devalue by 10% every year,
yes,
why do you think there's been such a reluctance to do that in Nigeria? Because at the end of the day, the middle class is a tiny bit of the population. I mean, it's one of the loudest, but that is actually not the population you should be pandering to. Why do you believe the CBN governor, Nigeria president have not allowed this to happen and continue to artificially lift the Naira, strengthen the Naira? You can speculate.
The best word for it is economic ignorance. Because why do they allow electricity to be so heavily subsidized? And the result of the subsidy of electricity in Nigeria today is that we don't have electricity. If you allow the distributing companies to price electricity at where people in Ikoyi and the best users of electricity would pay for it, you would have 20,000 megawatts in 3 years. But when you tell somebody who's producing a good, I'm prepared to pay 120 naira per kilowatt hour, I am prepared to pay it. But you tell them they must sell it at 48 naira per kilowatt hour. They're not going to produce as much. Look at the telephones. When the telephones came to Nigeria, a SIM card used to cost $20,000. Telecom companies made so much money, they created so much capacity that now they give away the SIM cards for free. You have to let the rich people subsidize capacity so that they can get cheaper for the people who are less rich. So electricity subsidy, again, is economic ignorance. Fuel subsidy is economic ignorance.
Let's talk about the restructuring conversation we're about to have.
Yes.
You were talking about the expectations.
Huge accusations of economic ignorance, which if we have time, we'll come back to that. But yes.
You're big on restructuring, obviously, from what you said and the expectations of what our next president should be doing.
Yes.
So, but when you talk about restructuring, a lot of people don't understand the manner in which the restructuring should take place, how the restructuring should take place. Now, tell us from your experience how you think the restructuring should go.
Let me give you an example. The mayor of Atlanta, or the mayor of New York, has a budget that's probably 3 times the budget of Nigeria. If you see the mayor of New York, in New York, I live in New York, I've seen him, he maybe has 2 or 3 cars in his convoy. He has little or no security following him around, maybe 2 or 3 people. So his infrastructure is minimal. You see a governor of a state like Ebonyi, whose budget is probably 100th of the budget of the mayor of New York City. He has 30 cars following him. He has 150 special assistants. He has infrastructure around him that is unbelievable compared to somebody who has a budget 100 times bigger than his. The point I'm making is our states are unsustainable. We cannot have 36 governors in Nigeria and support them the way they want to be supported. So any infrastructure has to do with, A, reducing cost of governance by reducing all these tin gods that we have around. 2, we have to, at the same time, as we're reducing this cost of governance, we must make sure that the federal government is not so big and that a lot of these powers are devolved to these other units so that the federal government is not, federal government has no business.
When you talk about units, are you talking about states or regions?
If you have asked me, I think that all the geopolitical zones should now be called states. So we now have only 6 states instead of 36. Each of them a governor. So immediately you shrink
the size of government.
Do you think that would help erase the divides that we've seen?
Well, here's what bothers me the most. In my state of Anambra, everybody in Anambra is Igbo. Everybody. We are fairly homogeneous in Anambra. But you see the fights that the governor should come from Anambra South, or we should zone into Anambra North. This is a homogeneous state, and they're still arguing whether it should be going to Anambra South or Anambra North. We shouldn't have those discussions in Anambra State. Anambra State is Anambra State. We're homogeneous. Let the best governor emerge. We shouldn't be talking Anambra South, Anambra East, Anambra West.
So we're throwing a whole lot of things in the pot
yes,
here.
Exactly.
But I want to go back to the size of government.
Yes.
Because I think the size of government, there are a lot of people that keep on saying the size of government, but the people in government have refused to legislate against the size of government. Because I think that restructure, I don't think the governor of any state is going to voluntarily say, I'm giving up all these perks. How do you suggest that? Because saying that this needs to happen is very nice, but we need to talk about the structures that need to be put in place for this to happen. Does this need to be legislated? Does this need to be lobbied by citizens? How do you reduce and shrink the size of government? And let's start on the state level.
Let us start on the simple level. If the president doesn't have 150 cars following him around, and he has 5 cars following him around, then no governor will have 150 cars following him around. Every governor will reduce their entourage to 5.
So start from the top.
Leadership. If the president sells up all those planes in the presidential jet, like British Airways, and flies commercial, then no governor will have a private jet. So my point is that it starts from leadership. If the president sits down with the Senate president, the Speaker of the House, and all the governors and says, listen, I'm going to hand you some of those things the federal government is doing. And I agree to change the formula, revenue formula, from the 52% I'm getting, I'll go down to 40%. If you take prisons, if you take tertiary education, if you take airports, you take these things, we'll give it to you in the state, we'll give you more money to do it. And we, the federal government, will become smaller and will be more of a standard-setting, supervising federal government. If you do that, so those are things you can do immediately. Now,
okay, so those are things you can do immediately.
Yes.
Are they realistic and achievable in Nigeria today?
Yes, I think that there are certain presidential candidates that will ensure that this happens in the first 6 months of their presidency. These simple things. There are more difficult things. Do we shrink the states? How do we reorganize the states? Those are more difficult. Those require legislation. Those require a national consensus. But we start with good leadership, with a vision of what's best for Nigeria. And that we don't have right now.
When we talk about the size of government, I mean, in the last administration, this was also a big conversation. There was a report that was published. National Assembly actually, I think, had a couple of conversations, but that has all gone away today. Why do you think that is? Why is there so much lack of will on reducing the size of government?
My simple answer is this. Let us not make perfect the enemy of good. We will not get perfect, but let's look for good, and let's not settle for bad. So the fact that they didn't do it before doesn't mean that we can't do it in the future. And the fact that we can't find Jesus Christ to come and be our president doesn't mean we shouldn't take the best that's available. So we'll take what we have, and we inspire them to do the right things, and we listen to what they have to say. They must have debates. When the candidates emerge, let them have debates. Let them come here and talk to you. You can moderate,
yes.
She can moderate. Yes. Ask them what they want to do for the country. We must...
And how they intend to do it.
Any presidential candidate that doesn't have at least 2 or 3 debates, we should reject him. We should say, on that basis, we're not voting for you. come and tell us what you want to do for us.
Do you expect, so the size of government, there's the RSII report. Do you expect us to say, okay, let's bring this report out. Let's actually have a conversation about it today. Let's the next administration pick up the report and actually do something. Because that's the biggest challenge we have in Nigeria, that we produce reports, we produce studies, and nothing is done.
And we don't hold government accountable. That's the problem. We don't. You have a platform, a very powerful platform. You should be shouting every day, debate, debate, debate.
Well, we're open for debates. Come.
Bring our RSII report. Tell us what you want to do about it. It's actually a pretty good report. It's not perfect, but it's a starting point. Let us hold our government accountable. Let us stop allowing them to tell us things that are manifestly untrue, and then we don't hold them accountable.
Let me play the devil's advocate here. This government would say that they have reduced the expenditure. There's the recurrent, there's the capital. They have reduced the recurrent expenditure, and more is being put into capital expenditure. Is that what we see? Is that what you see?
That statement, they have changed the ratio from recurrent to capital somewhat. That's a good thing. But they have not, what they have done is they have reduced total expenditure in dollar terms. So when you look at the budget of, is it 7 trillion today? In dollar terms, compared to the 5 trillion of 2015, it's actually smaller in dollar terms. So you're shrinking expenditure. You're shrinking your total capital expenditure in real terms over the period. So yes, that's why you don't see any new projects, because they're actually spending less money in total in dollar terms than used to be spent. So yes, look, this government has done some good things. They have some good people in the government. It's no question. There's no government that's totally bad, and there's no government that's totally good. Except if you want to think of Hitler's government that's totally bad, we'll say that. So there are some good things that have been done. That's not, but it's our job to hold them to the highest standards. They have Ministry of Information, they have all these people to say the good things they do. Our job as citizens, and your job as the press, is to hold them to higher standards. It doesn't mean we don't like them, or we don't see the good things they do. They are not doing enough good things, and they can do much better. That's what we're saying.
What's interesting, just going back to the issue of accountability and holding people accountable, and I know the Kemi Adeosun controversy sort of came and went, and you actually weighed in on this on your Twitter page.
That was tongue in cheek.
That was tongue in cheek, but it is. I mean, tongue in cheek is there's always underlining truth to that. Why do you think? I mean, once again, that issue has gone away. I mean, you mentioned some of the reasons why. I think we have the tweet here somewhere. We have the tweet here somewhere. Hopefully, I can get it and read it. But it's up. I know it's up on the screen at home. Why do you think that issue has? I mean, for some of the reasons you said in the tweet. Can you expand on that?
I don't know the truth of the
investigation
of this situation.
Because it actually is an alleged.
Yes. I don't know the truth of it. But the behavior of the government in this matter is clearly wanting. The president should have called the Minister of Finance and said, is this thing true? What happened? If he was satisfied with her explanation, whatever that explanation was, he should have made a statement, I have talked to her, I'm satisfied with her explanation, she has my full confidence. If he wasn't satisfied with her explanation, then he should have told her, please put your resignation on my desk in the next 24 hours. That matter should have been concluded in 48 hours, either with him supporting her or with him asking for resignation. The silence for 6 weeks is clearly an insult to the Nigerian people. And I don't know, I'm not falling on either side on the matter.
Sure.
But the way to handle those things, 48 hours, what happened? Okay. Next day, we have talked to her, we have confidence in her, we support her. She will stay for these reasons or resign. So this silence is an insult to Nigerians, and that's what I'm talking about, accountability. And again, I'm not saying she should go or she should not go, but the matter should have been handled in a way that shows respect for the Nigerian people, and it has not been handled that way.
When you were head of AMCON, there was also a lot of issues around accountability and transparency. What were some of the things that you felt that you were asked to respond to, that you were proud that they were asking you to be accountable for that. So when you talk about accountability, what were some of the things you thought, I'm so glad that they're asking me to respond to these things. I'm so glad that Nigerians are holding me accountable because you were managing a huge amount of assets for the people.
Well, two things. One of the things that annoyed me the most when I was MD of AMCON was that they gave me an extremely powerful board of directors. There was the Deputy Governor of CBN, there was the Permanent Secretary of Finance on it, the DG SEC was on it, the MD NDIC was on it, and they were a very, very difficult group as a CEO to work with.
As from a corporate governance perspective?
Yes, they did. And we had a board meeting an average of every 2 weeks. Most people have it every 3 months.
Is that because of extraordinary situations?
Because of the amount of work and the amount of opportunities for misbehavior. So we had all these meetings, and they had to approve all sorts of things. And I didn't like it as CEO. Obviously, I wanted more power,
sure.
But they held me to the fire. And now I'm very grateful because when people are now looking in retrospect at what happened at AMCON, they see that every board meeting had to be attended by both the PEMSEC Finance and the Deputy Governor CBN. If they couldn't make it, we cancelled and rescheduled the board meeting. So everything we did was signed off by CBN at the highest level and Finance at the highest level.
Why do you think there was such a huge accusation around transparency around AMCON? Why do you think people felt like they didn't understand what was happening at AMCON?
You see, you said managing assets for government. AMCON assets do not belong to the government. The government didn't pay for them. AMCON borrowed money and paid for those assets. And those assets...
Sorry, I stand corrected. You were being regulated by the government, but...
Yes, but the assets didn't belong to the government at any point in time. So we're being regulated by the government. Look, it was an institution that came from nothing and all of a sudden showed up with 6 trillion in assets. The biggest, at some point, financial institution in Nigeria, out of nowhere. Yes, so we had to be held very, very, very accountable for everything we did. And yes, there are some decisions we made that I wouldn't make now. One of the things I said recently was, I wish I had a whistleblower policy in AMCON. But I didn't think of it, and you grow. But I'm also very proud of the fact that there is no credible, and I say that with no apology whatsoever, no credible scandal associated with AMCON. People will say, well, you did this, you shouldn't have done it this way. And
those are learnings.
Some of the times they're correct. But there was no case where there was a credible scandal. And we had 6 trillion in assets, bigger than most state governments, maybe. And so, yes, people had a right to be very, very suspicious of what was going on. People had a right to ask us questions. People had a right to hold our feet to the fire. And there are things we did that we could have done better. But that's all in the learning experience.
All right. Now, with the elections around the corner, come 2019, yes. They say we do money politics in Nigeria. We've seen the cost of the forms on various levels, and it's a cause for worry. Even the campaigns are expensive, gifts are given, money is just thrown at. How does that make the situation worse, the political situation worse in Nigeria, having to spend so much money on elections?
There's 2 types of money spent in elections. There's what I call the good money and the bad money. You have to go and talk to people in every corner of the country. That's expensive. A president candidate doesn't wander into Lagos by himself. He has to come with people. He has to come with a group of people. He has to come with advisors. And so there's some money that needs to be spent to run an election. And since government is not financing elections in Nigeria, and they should look at doing that, the individual and the party have to find funds to do that. That's good money. The money that is spent in bribing security agencies if they are bribed, bribing INEC if they are bribed, buying votes is bad money. And we should do everything we can to eliminate that side of it. But when you have a law that says presidential campaign shouldn't spend more than 1 billion naira, it's ridiculous. You're going to spend...
What is ridiculous, the amount?
1 billion, you spend 1 billion, first of all, you don't account for inflation, you don't account for devaluation, you don't account for a whole bunch of things. You're going to spend 1 billion naira in every state if you're a presidential candidate. So the law itself is asking to be broken.
How do we reform funding around elections? How do we reform?
The best way to do is for government to say, we will fund the presidential candidates of the major parties X amount.
Would that be fair? Would that be fair?
It will be cheaper and better and more transparent, but it may not be the fairest. But again, you have to make an omelette, you have to break eggs. You have to give up something for something else. The way we're doing it right now is not correct. Every minister, every government agent is pressured to bring money for election. I know I was pressured, but I couldn't because of the way AMCON was run. But I know I was pressured to bring money for the election.
What about independent candidacy? There were situations where if you're not in a political party, you can make no headway in getting any political office in Nigeria.
Where has it worked in the world? It doesn't work in England.
We've talked about it.
It doesn't work in America. It doesn't work anywhere. Look, you have to have a structure and an organization because campaigns are very complicated things. And the romantic notion of an independent candidate, much as I like it, a Robin Hood coming in and saving us all, it's wonderful, but it's not going to happen practically.
What are some of the other practical ways around campaign funding? Because what you're saying is that you were pressured to bring money.
Yes.
And other people are being pressured today to bring money.
Absolutely.
So what that does is, of course, it shrinks the overall economy of the, and shrinks spending in those organizations if they do bring funding. And then, of course, then there's more funding, of course, that is activated on the ground, which is why people always say, oh, there will be some spending around election happening. But then it's sort of spending from different places. When you look at structure, one is the government paying, one is campaign donations. How do you structure campaign donations around ideology so that actually people can come? The other, instead of us always giving people, instead of the politicians giving people money, there actually could be almost a two-way street rather than pressuring so many high-level people to bring money.
What I would say is that these things take time. We've been doing this for 16, 20 years. Ideologies emerge over a long period of time. So even if you look at the US, which is who we're copying the most, the Republican ideal has changed many, many times. There were once the Democrats were the slavery party, then Republican. Abraham Lincoln founded the Republican Party to go against slavery and end slavery. So, and now the Republicans are now the ones that are associated with repression. So these things do take time. And again, I think that if we gave ourselves enough time, all we need, and I keep telling people this, we had two presidents in Venezuela that ruined Venezuela. Chavez and Maduro, back to back, have ruined. And we had in Brazil two presidents, Lula, and forget the other one, that fixed Brazil. We just need one visionary leader who is competent and who cares about Nigeria and who has the capacity to lead us. We just need one. And in 8 years, all those things that we're worried about will change because of the leadership. What we lack is leadership, and that's what we're looking for.
So going back to some of the other conversations you've been having, you said we need one leader. Do you think that leader can do what needs to be done to Nigeria in one term? Because that has also been some of the conversations that I've seen you have, and some of the conversations on your Twitter feed.
Yes.
Is this
in
4 years?
I think in 4 years he can lead the foundation, he can change the national discourse, he can change the national emotional energy, and he can direct us and point us to where we need to be. He can then hand over to the next person who will follow in his steps.
What type of
4 years
policies?
is enough.
What type of policies do you enact in 4 years that can start to put you on a path to double-digit growth?
I just said them. Unite the country.
But how is uniting the country at this? I mean, how is uniting the country going to sort of give you that economic boost that you need?
You have a whole section of the economy, the Southeast, that is convinced that they're not part of Nigeria today. So you bring them in. And it's not that hard to do. You have the whole of the South that think they're being exploited. You bring them in. It's not that hard to do. You have the whole of the North who feels that they're looked upon differently than they should. You bring them in. You have to provide leadership. And when I say this, I'm not running for president.
I know you're not running for president.
Because I know I can.
Have you picked up a form?
Because I know I can do it. I know I can do it. I don't have the equipment, the credibility, the reach to do it now. If I did, I would. But people should realize that there's a time for everybody. And I can't do it. You wouldn't do it. You are supposed to be running with
I
somebody.
definitely am not running. That is this. Yes, I'm not doing this.
So yes, there are people who are better than the rest. And let them emerge and let's support them. And they will start us on the path. And maybe 4 years from now, we'll have somebody better than that person who will now carry the mantle to the next level.
Should we think about term limit reform? so that it's more 6 years instead of 4 years? What are some of the, I mean, what do you think about that? So instead of saying, yes, you can do 1 term, but maybe it's a 6-year term.
I like the idea of a 6-year term. The problem with the 6-year term, the problem with the 6-year term is that if you have somebody who comes in and knows they're going in 6 years, and they're a bad leader, you will wish the last 2 years will feel like longer than the first 4. So it all boils down to, are we getting the best leader who cares about Nigeria? Look, Kagame has some very negative things about him, that he's brutal and he has dictatorial tendencies. But his love and his capacity for his country is so big that world leaders are loving the guy because he loves his country and he has tremendous capacity. But he has some negative qualities. So do you get a Kagame or do you get an Idi Amin? I don't want Idi Amin for 6 years, but I'll take a Kagame for 6 years. So in the end, the bottom line is we need good leadership.
All right.
So who are you looking forward to? I mean, when you're looking at the 2019 and you look at what's happening with 2019, what are you looking most forward to, and what are you most positive about? Because you haven't been that positive about the economy. You haven't been. You're optimistic but not positive about the economy. When you look at some of the things that are happening with 2019 and lead up to 2019, what gives you hope? So
I want PDP to produce the best candidate and for the rest of the candidates to accept him and work with them. PDP side. I want APC to accept the fact that they have not done well and then tell us in the campaign how they intend to do better. It is that clash of ideas, how APC will do better than they've done because they have an F. And how PDP
an F.
can produce somebody who can challenge them and make them reach the higher level. Those are the things I want to see. And when I see that, I'll decide. Right now, I have not decided. But I do know that APC today is an F. But they can change. They have time to change and tell us how they will get better.
Thank you so much.
As always, it's fun having you on the show. We'll have to bring you back a couple of more times before the elections.
Thank you.
It's time now for a short break. When we return, we'll be reviewing all the topics trending across the world. And I think Yemisi will be joining us for that. So don't go anywhere.